Game Up Hard Hydration. They are our sponsor. They have been great to us. And if you haven't tried Game Up, it's like your favorite sports drink and your favorite seltzer kind of get together. It's it's great. It's full flavor, 110 calories, comes in an 8-pack, 4 great flavors. Dave, why don't you tell them what flavors come in the pack?
Talking fruit punch, orange, lemon lime, and grape. So grab them and support them because they support us, and we appreciate Game Up for supporting this podcast, man. Dark Side of the Ring, although a very entertaining show, Joe, made me feel a little sad at times. Terry Gordy was the subject. Why don't you tell me what you thought of it?
Season 5, Episode 3 of Dark Side of the Ring. We got to Terry Gordy, and there was some great old footage in there. I kind of like that they started with his daughter who's still in wrestling and kind of what the Gordy name means. And you saw it also with his son talking about how he didn't feel he could live up to that name. But I loved the footage. The recreations were great. I mean, it gave you a lot of the legend of Terry Gordy, and then you saw the downfall, and it wasn't quite like Mike Von Erich level bad, but definitely a different person and performer after the incident.
So the Freebirds for me, this is kind of funny. I don't know if I've ever told you this. The first time I ever saw the Fabulous Freebirds growing up was actually in the WWF. That short run, I saw them on one Saturday morning. You know, they're coming out with their robes and everything, and I'm like, who are these guys? These guys are cool. You know what I mean? Automatically. And then they disappeared. And then, you know, you walk by like wrestling magazines and you're seeing things about this Texas World Class and the Von Erichs just before they got on ESPN, you know, and I'm like, oh, those are those guys that were in WWF, you know, and then I'd watch them there, and then, you know, they made their trips to AWA. I saw them there, and eventually NWA/WCW, and man, I've always enjoyed the Freebirds. Michael Hayes in particular was the guy who really stood out to me because he could talk and everything, but Terry Gordy was just that big powerhouse that I think I took for granted a little bit when I was younger, and then really started to respect him and appreciate him, especially when I saw him and Steve Williams come over and they had that feud with the Steiner brothers and they were just beating people up. And it was like, man, like how good is Gordy and Williams, right? And I had seen Gordy even earlier in the heyday. He had that UWF run, I didn't say, you know, where he was feuding with guys like Jim Duggan and Steve Williams himself then. And I think he was just someone I always kind of took for granted. I knew he was one of the best. But like watching his old footage, it was really clear to me just how good he was, but then also the fall, you know, like looking back, because again, Gordy was kind of off my radar. He'd kind of disappear. So I watched back and I look at some of his old matches, and it's like, it was really sad. And it was really sad. And, you know, like, they played it right when they said, you know, you could even see, I think it was his daughter, Miranda, said you could see how full of life he was. But then after the overdose, he had almost like a deer in headlights look, and you could see it in that shoot interview where he can't really answer anything. I've never seen that before. And I just like, man, that is devastating. And also very interesting too, for me, I don't know, you'll pick it up too, that Mick Foley actually had probably one of his best post, you know, OD matches right after the incident, where Mick Foley pulled off this good match from him, which that was from Stranglemania. I don't, you know, they pulled those death matches.
Oh, yeah, at the Kawasaki Stadium.
Right. So the ICP had done a Stranglemania. They did that, basically a bootleg copy of the event, and they dubbed commentary over it. And I've always watched that match and enjoyed that match. And I just like hearing Mick's, you know, to Gordy's credit, you know, I told him, you know, his punches used to be phenomenal. He says, don't hold back. And he's like, he did it. Also to hear Mick talk about how Gordy wasn't getting anybody in his line for an autograph session. And Mick Foley himself wanted to yell, like, that's the legend. Like, you should be over there. And you can see how important that was to Mick Foley. And I just thought, man, like, what a bummer, you know, to hear the kids talk about him. Just a real bummer, but also a real appreciation I felt for Terry Gordy after watching this episode.
Yeah, after watching this episode, we're going to have a rainy day here in town tonight or tomorrow. So I've got a Miracle of Violence collection on DVD that I think I'm going to pop in and watch some Japanese matches.
That sounds like a good time. I actually been kind of craving after that to watch a little Gordy and Williams. Gordy and Williams, right? Two of the best